everybody. Was that on? Oh. Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm so glad to see you. I was just telling some people that this is probably one of the friendliest, warmest groups that we've had. I just love seeing everybody here tonight. My name is Megan Landon, and I'm the gallery coordinator here at Overture Galleries. Hi. So I help coordinate all the galleries and help install them, take them down, help with any events such as this with our lovely guests. And I want to start out tonight by expressing some gratitude. Acknowledging Ho-Chunk Nation's ancestral lands, Overture Center for the Arts celebrates the rich traditions, heritage, and culture that thrived long before our arrival. Overture respectfully recognizes this Ho-Chunk land and affirms that we are better when we stand together. In addition to that, I just want to thank, again, all of you for being here, and for our lovely panelists, and for all of my team members and people that helped make this event happen and put it together. As for some quick housekeeping, wayfinding, most of you know where the food was, and I hope you enjoyed that. I know our chef here, Chef Cloud, yes. Chef Cloud created this menu specifically for this event, and I know that it was a labor of love, and so thank you for enjoying that. I believe it will still be out for seconds, or if you're craving more of anything. Right here, where you're at, is the Rotunda stage, where our program will begin shortly. And then upstairs, right above us, to my right, your left, is the Rotunda Gallery, where the Fabric of Community exhibition of Alicia, Rheal, and Tracy Nickolaus is displayed currently. If you didn't check that out prior to getting food, you'll definitely want to check it out afterwards. And now I'm going to do a quick introduction of our panelists. Right next to me, we have Catrina Sparkman, who is the founder of Ironers Press, the Creators Cottage, and the Memory Collectors Storytelling Project. And she is going to talk about her community efforts to fight Alzheimer's through art, culture, storytelling, and promoting healthy lifestyle choices. Next to her is artist Alicia Rheal. She is a member of the Memory Collectors, and she's going to share her connection to Alzheimer's through the Legacy Quilt Project, which combines portraits and domestic textiles to honor the memories and histories of individuals affected by Alzheimer's. Next in line is Tracy Nickolaus, who is our other artist in the Rotunda Gallery, and she is going to discuss her portrait work, blending paint and textiles, and how her personal experience with dementia and caretaking has influenced her artistic journey. And last but not least is Dr. Fabu Carter, who is a poet and the senior program manager for the Wisconsin Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. And she will be speaking about the disproportionate impact of Alzheimer's disease on the Black community and initiatives aimed at combating the disease. So without further ado, I am going to turn it over to Dr. Carter.
Thank you. So I'd first like to just thank the two artists, Alicia and Tracy, for inviting me to be on this panel. I'd also like to tell you that there is a resource table in the back. Alzheimer's is a dread disease, and there are things that we can do, lifestyle changes that can be helpful in it. So there are materials in the back. We have a Precious Memory Choir for people who have the disease or caregivers. So there's various things back there. Please look. And now we'll just start off. So as you know, you're here for Total Visibility, the Fabric of Community. And I'm here to talk about the impact of Alzheimer's disease. So you can see these kind of terrible statistics that 6.7 million Americans have the disease. 14 million, double, will have the disease by 2050. It's the 7th leading cause of death. It talks about the cost and that deaths from Alzheimer's has increased by 146%. Part of that is that previously, when people did die from the disease, there weren't as many um, good ways to document that the origins of the death was really for AD. I'd also like to just stop and say that there is an umbrella called dementia, and under it, the most commonly known form of dementia is Alzheimer's disease. So it could be Lewy body, it could be frontal lobe disease. So there are many different types, but they fall under dementia and they fall under memory loss. So this is just giving us a graph again. The costs of it, the number of caregivers, and it looks at Wisconsin specifically. So during former President Barack Obama's tenure, he came up with the idea for the National Institute of Health that since this was becoming such a prolific disease, to create Alzheimer's disease research centers that are scattered all over the country. So we're very fortunate in Wisconsin that the only one that is in Wisconsin is right here in Madison. So I just mentioned this, that there are common types of dementia, and it's really important to note that, because sometimes if people say Parkinson's disease dementia, they don't think it's under that umbrella. Or sometimes people think dementia is different from Alzheimer's disease or vascular dementia. They're all under that umbrella of memory loss. And just to give you a small example, I was told by my supervisors, who are scientists in this disease, if you can organize a dinner party, if you can use your faculties to plan the food, time everything, that's an indicator that you do not have the disease. As we get older, we can have memory issues because our brain is like a giant computer. The more we put in, the more time it takes to pull out. But it is important, and you can do that here in Madison, Wisconsin. You can actually be tested. You can actually determine if you have the disease versus if you have medication that is causing memory loss versus this is just normal aging. So before I pass the mic down, African Americans are twice as likely to have Alzheimer's disease as any other racial group, especially European Americans. Part of the reason for this is thought because we lead in high blood pressure and other vascular diseases. Next would be Latinos or Hispanic or Spanish-speaking people, and after that, Native American, and after that, European Americans, and the racial group that has the least AD are Asian people. So whenever we're giving the dire statistics, we also want to give you the hopeful statistics. There are things you can do to modify your diet. There are things you can do to educate yourself before the disease becomes prominent. So in other words, Alzheimer's disease or dementia starts in the body long before you and I realize it. The early signs are people who burn down their kitchen because they forget that the stove is on. So what we're trying to do is educate people in their 20s to 40s to live a specific lifestyle, to eat a certain way, to exercise, to do the kinds of things that will have an impact with the disease. There's not a lot known about it. Scientists are still studying. African Americans and all people of color are considered underrepresented in the studies. So even though we had several breakthrough drugs, We had very few African Americans, even fewer Native Americans, and no Asian representation, and very few Spanish speaking as well. And the last thing I'd like to say is that there is a study that is examining people who genetically would seem like they would get the disease, or who do have vascular problems or do have high blood pressure, and they never get the disease. So I'd like to say I'm one of those people in that camp, and I hope you are too.
Hi, my name is Tracy Nickolaus, and I want to thank the Overture in particular for combining Alicia and I together. Our artwork is similar in that we both paint portraits and we both use fabric in different ways, but I think there's an underlying theme of having our family be affected by Alzheimer's that really tied us together. I'm honored to be on this panel with everyone, and I'm really honored to share my story with all of you. I'm sure that many people have bits and pieces that we can all relate to. A little family history. My father had vascular dementia, and he had it for many years, and my mom took care of him as long as she could. And we eventually had to move him into a facility when she could no longer care for him. She was moved on to that same campus, and she could see him every day, but obviously, you know, it was not ideal. My mother-in-law was diagnosed with Alzheimer's while my mother was helping my father. That diagnosis was heartbreaking for all of us. And unfortunately, her husband, my dear father-in-law, was taking care of her. And, you know, he did not have Alzheimer's, but the caretaking that he did, and honestly the heartbreak of losing her that way, was the cause of his passing early. So during the time that my mother-in-law was experiencing Alzheimer's, my mother was diagnosed with Lewy body dementia. So there's a lot of kinds of dementia. I will be getting the handout of the good foods to eat. So all in all, it's been a long 15 years of constantly having somebody suffering, dealing with family members who are suffering along with them. And it's a roller coaster of ups and downs, and I think that's the lens through which I create my art, is really trying to work out my feelings about it and my grieving process. If you get a chance to see the show, there are a couple of different styles of paintings that I have upstairs. A couple of them are done in a way that I approached the artwork, which was doing a photo collage of different people, always including parts of my mom or dad. I would do a photo collage of different heads, hands, bodies, scenery, and I would make a sketch of the collage. I would then paint on the canvas, and then I started adding fabric. And this was a direct correlation to my mother, who for years, she sewed my clothes, she sewed my prom dresses, she covered my chairs, she embroidered, she crocheted, she knitted. The only thing she didn't do was quilt. And it was just a way to connect with her as she kind of slipped away. She's now nonverbal. But the whole process of making a pattern with like the brown tissue paper for the space that I wanted to cover in fabric, and pinning it together and cutting it out, really was like a meditation to be with her again. And it was hard, but it really kind of made me meditate on her and loss, honestly, and grieving. And I think what happened last year was I'm kind of coming to terms with, my mom is probably at the end of her road right now, and I decided to take her portrait on full face value. I didn't need to make a photo collage of somebody who wasn't a real person who came to show my feelings when I went to the memory care units, or how I felt people were looking at me or me looking at them. I could finally look at my mother full on. And so the work has changed a little bit. I still do use fabric, or I paint what looks like fabric. So it's been a long road, but I will say that, the biggest compliment I can get is when somebody looks at one of my paintings and they look at me and they say, like, my dad had Alzheimer's, my mom had Alzheimer's, like, I get this. This is something that I recognize. And I feel like what I want my work to do is honor people who are aging, who have memory loss, because I feel like it's really easy to not talk about them, to not include them in your conversation, to be scared to visit them because they might not recognize you. I just feel like putting a light on that would really hopefully open a conversation or make you reflect on your own relationships, or maybe just feel gratitude for being well at this time. So basically that is what my goal is to connect. And I think that's what we all want to do, is connect, and especially when we're in a time of grieving and loss. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Alicia.
Thank you. Yes. When I was waiting at the closed front door of the Overture when we were going to have the meeting about the show upstairs, there was this other person waiting at the front door. I was like, wait a minute, are you? And she said, yes. So, and I had never seen Tracy's work before, and she was showing me pictures, and I was like, oh my God, my father had Alzheimer's, and yes, I totally get that. So right from the start, this is wonderful. So my father had Alzheimer's, and it was about 8 years from diagnosis to the end. And he was in his early 80s, very healthy, very fit, very vibrant, very active. And I think because of all of that, the dementia didn't set in any earlier. I think with everything he was doing, he was postponing it, and he was vegetarian as well. But during that long 8 years or so, I was the primary caregiver and onlooker and doer of things and visits for my dad. And fortunately, he moved to Madison just before all of the diagnosis and stuff. So it's always with you if you have someone with this disease. And just over a year ago, mutual friend Carly Latimer from the Bubbler Madison Public Library, she said, you should come with me to go visit this place called the Creator's Cottage. And I had never heard of it. And we went to go and fell in love with Catrina. She was talking about their memory collectors storytelling project, Fighting Alzheimer's with Art. And I have been a self-employed artist for the last 35 years ago, primarily as a muralist, and more recently I'm focusing on portraiture. And so the whole idea of challenging Alzheimer's with art just was a great fit in so many ways. And also the fact that I had just started quilting with my mother. And I, for the longest time, never, ever, 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 ever thought I would be one of those little old ladies at the sewing machine just stitching away. And boy, did I fell hard into that role in becoming my mother. So I was newly into quilting. I got together with the memory collectors and met all of these incredibly strong, wonderful, wonderful women. And I thought, now this is a time I can combine my painting portraits with my quilting and just check off all of the boxes. And thus started the legacy quilt. And I started my first one with Dr. Fabu Carter, because how can you not go wrong starting a legacy quilt with Dr. Fabu? And I said, I just want to try this to see if it'll work. And halfway through, I was like, okay, I need to make one for every single memory collector. And I think we're probably at 6 or so far. We've got about 40 more to go, but I'm excited. I'm excited. They're wonderful. I will let Catrina talk about the memory collectors.
Hello, everyone. I am Catrina Sparkman, and I am the artistic director at the Creator's Cottage, and that's a picture of the Creator's Cottage, just some of the things that we do there. So we opened our doors in 2019, literally days before the pandemic hit. And I had been an artist in this city for over 25 years, so I knew that artists and writers, in particular artists and writers, they needed a space. So at the Creator's Cottage, we have a writer's cafe, we have a fully equipped fiber arts studio space, we have overnight retreat accommodations for visiting writers and artists, and we have our own printing press. So we can take author from concept to completion, and they can leave with professionally printed copies of their book. So we may sound a little schizophrenic, but we do a lot at the Creator's Cottage. How we kind of fell into the memory care business. We, after COVID, we realized that a lot of the artists in our community were dealing with cognition disease in some form or fashion. Someone close to them, a loved one, they were either caregiving, they were dealing with people, you know, in their immediate family that had cognition disease. And so we started to do a little bit more research. And I am one of these people, I love the spaces where art and activism connect. And we have always wanted to be a guild for our artists, whatever our artists need. So anyway, we started doing the research, and what we found out, and Dr. Fabu talked about this, is that African Americans in particular were outpacing whites by 100% in the development of cognition disease. 100%. And that number was based largely on, you know, social determinant factors, you know, stress and diet and all things that were very much preventable. And so, that works. Nice. Well, there's no other place like the Creator's Cottage, right? So what we learned was that that this was all very preventable, and so we came up with this program called the Memory Collector Storytelling Project, Fighting Alzheimer's with Art. And we said we would do a couple of things. It's really ambitious. But we said we would gather together in community, we would gather together in safe community, and we would tell stories, right? And we would collect these stories and we would either collect them on fabric and in written form. And so what we said was, okay, we're gonna put out a call, and we're gonna put out a call to 40 women. And if 20 women answer the call, we'll consider it a successful program. Well, about 45 women answered the call, and we counted it a success. And so we said they didn't have to have any experience in the arts. We teach you everything. So we have people who are master quilters in our group, and we have people who had never picked up a needle and thread at all. And it was wonderful because they would gather together once a month. We gathered together in community. We also said we would serve food because I don't know if you all know, but you can't go to People of Color events and not have food. So we would have food, but what we would do is we would make sure that it was heart healthy and it was brain healthy, okay? Because we wanted to target some of those factors. And so we said to our planning committee, we said, okay, we're gonna do vegan food, okay? And so everybody was kind of like, I don't know about this, because if you do vegan food for Black women, you better come correct. And we have plant-based sister, wave your hand out there. We have Annetta right here is the plant-based sister. She's been a vegan for over 20 years. She said, we can make this food good. I said, okay, you better bring it. And so she's been bringing it. And the food, I see some memory collectors out there. The food has been marvelous, has it not? Yes, and Carmen has also, is Carmen out there? Carmen is, so we have so many talented women who have come together, and they're part of the food prep team. And do I see any other food prep members out there? So, Cara with her amazing salads, and that's right. Dr. Julie out there. So so what makes this program so remarkable is that these are a group of women who are choosing for themselves, right? This is a group of women who have come together and said, and we're united in a cause. The cause is A, we want to do art, and 2, we want to keep our minds as we age. And so these women have united, and we take authority over our own health. So at every gathering, there's always a heart-healthy, brain-healthy meal prepared and served in community. And at every gathering, there's always a wellness moment. So we learn something related to, how to stay healthy, whether it's stress prevention or yes, stretching, and that's right. The memory collectors are helping me out. Yeah. So all of these things, we have a apothecary on site at the Creators Cottage, and we prepare our own teas and tinctures and all different types of ways that we can personally stay healthy as we age. So we have as our target population BIPOC women ages 40 and up, and now we have more than, everybody is welcome, of course. We wanted to focus on women of color because of the numbers, but we're like the Rainbow Coalition over there. We're everybody, and we also have made a 3-year commitment to this program. So year 1, we meet in community and we quilt. Year 2, we are going to take these quilts and these stories and we're going to turn it into a theatrical exhibition. And then year 3, we're gonna take these quilts and these stories and these re-engineered recipes that are mostly culturally specific recipes, things that we love, that didn't quite love us as much. You know, and so we took these recipes and we made them more heart healthy and brain healthy. So year 3, we're gonna take those recipes, we're gonna take these stories, we're gonna take these quilts, and we're gonna put it into a book. And I see our film producer out there? Wave your hand. And we're also creating a film, and that's our film producer with the most, Miss Regina out there. She's actually probably videotaping us right now. But we're also, because we want to raise awareness, what we do here, we want it to trickle out all over the world, because we can change this. This is something that is totally preventable. We can change this. So studies have shown that when you do art in community together, and there's laughter, and there's love, and there's good food, and there's fun, it makes the brain juicy. And that's what we want. We want juicy brains. It creates different pathways in our brains, you know? So that's what we're doing. We're keeping it juicy over here. I think that's that's a great way to end. We're keeping it juicy. You can see some of the pictures of some of the women and some of the beautiful work that they've created. Yes. And that's Sada. That's one of our under 40s. So what we did was we targeted women age 40 and up. And the reason why we said 40 was because scientists can begin to see markers in the body that say that you could possibly develop this thing. So we wanted to start with, you know, at age 40. But then we realized, you know, we were all over 40 and we needed some young people to do technological stuff for us. So we got a group called the Under 40s. And the Under 40s do, like, they plan the field trips and, you know, they do all of the leg work for us. You know, how they get us on Twitter, they do our social media. They're just like, and this is the funny story about one of our Under 40s. We're at the Quilt Expo, we have a sign-up list, and we straight analog over here, you know. We have people writing their names down. The under 40 said, oh, no, we cannot. So she is creating an app for us right now because she said we can never, ever do this again. So thank you. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Carter.
So just a few wrap up, please. Definitely the disease is modifiable. So that is very hopeful for all of us, that there are specific things that you can do to modify this disease. And one is diet, of course, and the other is exercise. So sorry for all of you people like myself who've led a very sedentary life. It's time to get moving. So before we get to our thank yous, I had the pleasure of meeting Joe, the father of Alicia, before I ever met her. Because what I did for a number of years was be a part of the Alzheimer's Poetry Project out of New York. So I went to different older adult facilities and I shared poetry, but I just didn't share poetry with them. They helped me create poetry. So with the Alzheimer's Poetry Project, and one of those thank yous is to Gary Glazner, is that what you do is you go in and you ask, what theme would you like to write on? And when people tell you what they want to write on, we go throughout the group and we get one sentence each. Then I take those sentences, write them down, go away, put them into a poem, and type them up and bring them back. And so I know you've heard of how music is so helpful in igniting memory? Well, I was working with a generation that memorized poetry. So it was a wonderful thing to start a poem, "My soul has grown deep like the rivers," and all of a sudden someone stands and tells you the whole poem, or something by Walt Whitman, or whatever they had learned as a child. So I'm going to end now with two poems, and the first one is from the Avalon poets. So when I would go to the facilities, if they were Burr Oaks, they were the Burr Oaks poets. If they were from Avalon, they were from the Avalon poets. So this one is called "An Early Christmas" by the Avalon poets. Christmas is beautiful. It has lots of snow. Thanksgiving and Christmas are my favorite times of the year. Too early for me to think about Christmas. I think Christmas is a wonderful season, full of gifts and Christmas cheer. Oh yes, I like snowy days. I like snow too, beautiful, cold snow. Christmas in July. Sometimes people celebrate Christmas in July when it's really hot out. That's really too early. Christmas is really a beautiful time of the year. It is chilly outside. All we need is a bowl for the chili. That's a joke. I like that joke, like I like Christmas. Merry Christmas and yum, yum. So you can tell just by each person giving a sentence, whatever their thoughts were on the topic, and then you just take the sentences and put them together. See how remarkably they made a beautiful poem. And then the last poem I'm going to read is one that I did the Alzheimer's Poetry Project before I took the job as senior program manager with the Alzheimer's Disease Research Center, with the African Americans fighting Alzheimer's disease in midlife, and also the Wisconsin Registry for Alzheimer's Prevention. So before I did all of this work professionally, I was working with these wonderful elders in community facilities with poetry. So this is my poem called "For Our Beloved Elders with Memory Loss." Some call you older adults. I call you wise elders, living long and learning much. You should be honored, your gray hair a symbol of victory and authority in life. When your memory hides or flees, and every face seems strange, feel the other signs of love: gentle touch, kind voice, the spirit that welcomes you just as you are. Reassure yourselves that you know how love feels, for it will chase the fear of forgetting away. Thank you.
I really appreciate, in particular, the framing of the conversation, the interventions as this space where there's a lot we can do. And I, in particular, love that around community caring for each other. And so thank you for doing that and that intention that you brought into the presentation. And the question that I have is that when I think about my experience with Alzheimer's, the experiences that you all have shared, the experiences that folks in this room have, I wonder when you think about this intersection of community with the disease, not only at prevention, but also at the point of care, what that might look like for you all.
So I'll just briefly answer like this. So it's not that I just work with the disease, but I specifically work with underrepresented groups in the research. And more importantly, we believe in community engaged research, which is what you just said about scientists not just looking for intervention or prevention, and we all hope, I believe they will find a cure one day. But what you're saying in the meantime, how do you connect with community? How do you support caregivers? How do you also support people who are diagnosed with the disease so they don't feel that they've lost their humanity or that they're no longer seen as part of the family and the community? And I was just looking around here. Even this rotunda is actually more, it's better for people with AD disease because they don't do well with patterns. They don't do well when things are confused, you know. You need clear things, clear signs. So it's kind of a habit now. Everywhere I go, I look to see, is this a friendly place if you have dementia? Is this a place where you could navigate and get around? And also have people understand if you are exhibiting signs of memory loss, that you're not intoxicated or you're not anything else, but maybe having problems making sense of where you are and what you're doing. So I just want to say, even in the partnership with the Creators Cottage, and we have other partnerships as well, it's really so important for scientists not to just do their work isolated or without the input and, of course, the research, but actually partnering with communities to better understand what can be done, what should be done through art and other means to affirm people, to assist people, and to give people wellness now, even as they go through the disease. How do you help them achieve the most wellness possible?
Any other questions? Oh. Perfect.
Hi. I needed that exercise, so that was good, especially after that delicious food. Thank you, Overture Center, for that. Thank you so much. All four of you bring such amazing perspectives. I am wondering if if part of this work, and Dr. Fabu, you are specifically talking about marginalized communities, right? I work with people with disabilities through the arts and with an organization that does that. And one of the things that troubles me is the prevalence of dementia and Alzheimer's in certain groups of people with diagnoses like Down syndrome. Most people with Down syndrome, I think by age 30, exhibit signs of dementia and Alzheimer's, and I'm wondering if you can speak to that at all in research that you've come across, if anybody's looking into that, and if Arts for All Wisconsin can be part of that discussion.
Thank you very much for that, and you're absolutely correct that people with Down syndrome have been diagnosed at a higher rate with memory loss. And yes, there are studies that specifically target that. It would be difficult for me to tell you how many studies that are, but I do have some colleagues in the audience. There are studies that look at exercise. There are studies that look at diet. There are studies that look at so many topics because it is a multifaceted disease. And they don't even, scientists have enough information to know, why does it operate this way in one body? Why does it operate different? So I happen to know for sure that there are those studies going on currently here in Madison. And if you give me your card, I'll see if I can connect you to someone who is doing that research. But I also want to say, not only that it is because we need to understand it is a very difficult disease, but also that it manifests so differently in people. And as of now, while scientists have made great strides, and as you might have read, some new drugs have come out that are being helpful in understanding. People were laughing when Catrina was saying a fat, juicy brain, but it is exactly correct that what the disease does is shrink the tissues of the brain, shrink the ability of the brain to hold memory. And those people with fat, juicy brains are the healthiest. So they now have ways to examine the brain, you know, to take PET scans to see what's happening inside your brain. Are there amyloids? Are there tau, which are indicators possibly of the disease? So there's a lot that they can do. There are a lot of studies that are going on. There are a lot of scientists who are experts in different fields, and there are just so many because everybody is looking for the key. Everybody is looking for the key that unlocks this disease. And we know that it is possible. And I always believe and hope that it'll be our UW scientists that are able to be at the forefront of helping people, again, with prevention and with intervention.
Hello, artists. I want to ask if you've worked with people who have Alzheimer's already, who weren't artists before they were diagnosed, and I want to know, is there a type of art that maybe is easier for them to get into and that kind of triggers the brain to behave differently, or anything? Have you had that experience, or anybody doing any studies about that?
Sorry, I don't want to be the only one answering here. But that question makes me kind of sad because I did work with and still do work with the Alzheimer's Poetry Project. And there were three different kinds of people. Some just were lovers of poetry and learned it as a child. I remember one lady told me that all her life she used to cut out poems out of newspapers just because she liked to read them and she liked to memorize them. Then there are other people who were artists before the disease struck. And then there's that third category, again, of artists. So maybe they weren't poets or writers, but they were musicians. And it's also electrifying to see how a certain song will just abruptly ignite someone, and they can tell you, an elder can tell you when it was played. So I just remember we were doing one line, it was Valentine's Day, and all of a sudden, a woman in her 80s started singing a song that had the word Valentine in it. I looked it up on my phone. We played it for everyone. So that time we had a poem and a song too. So the reason I was feeling a little bit sad because I have worked with poets and seen the ravages of the disease. So first they could recite their poems. They had published books. They could recite their poems, verbatim. And then 6 months later, they had to read their poems, but they still knew that they were theirs and they were reading them. And then at the end, they could not even read them. So for those of us who have family members, those of us who have friends, those of us who have worked with artists, it's very hard to see someone, go from having published books to not even being able to read. But then at the same time, by asking people for a line, they could still speak a line. And when they spoke and you combined it and compiled it into a poem and gave it back to them, there was that sense of accomplishment that, yes, I could still write poetry. Or for that lady who remembered that song, yes, I can pull up this beautiful song that had so much meaning to me. So,
Is there any comment from the visual artists about how that works with people with diagnosed with dementia?
Well, I can only speak to what I've experienced with my immediate family, and my mother, as I mentioned, was a creative person. She was not an artist, but she made and created a lot of things. And when she was first in her memory unit, she would be at a table painting. She never painted. She would just do these abstract paintings, which I have one, which is one of my most prized possessions. And then it went to, she would color. And they said, Sally just sits down and she will color for hours. She just, she was busy. She had work to do. And she would color. And then, as Dr. Carter mentioned, it's a slow slide. And, ultimately, there's not a lot of ability to connect enough to hold an instrument or to really focus on something like that. But I will say that during the time that she was a little bit more able, it definitely provided her with a lot of joy. Mm-hmm. And I think that's possible when you accept somebody for where they are right now as opposed to who they used to be. So to be open to other creative avenues that maybe they weren't likely to explore, definitely give them a chance to do something, start a poem, give them something to draw with. And I think you'd be surprised to find that, given the chance, maybe, more people would participate in that kind of thing.
Thank you.
I was asked to help a doctor who had Alzheimer's, early onset Alzheimer's, and before the disease, he was quite an accomplished artist as well. But by the time I came in, he was really frustrated with what he was trying to do. And he was trying to be literal, and that's a tough call, even when you have all of your brain cells together. So I think taking away that specific goal and just letting it be fun without any destination, put on some music, try materials you haven't used before, and just have it be enjoyable in the moment without that it needs to look like this, because that will only bring frustration. Mm-hmm. So take it one day at a time, where you're at, and just celebrate the joy of the moment and put on some music and go with it.
Actually, every artist should be doing that, by the way. We should be in the joy of the moment and creating without expectation or trying new things and being curious. So that's a nice life lesson.
Yeah, you're good. Okay. Hello. I have a question for, I guess, Dr. Carter, but also for Catrina. What's the importance of culturally relevant programming, as you've mentioned, with the Memories Collective and stuff like that? And then what are also some recommendations for people looking to build community outside of a specific space? You know, what can grandkids do? What can younger adults do with their parents? What are some of those recommendations?
You want to repeat that question one more time? Nothing's wrong with my memory. It's just
no, and as
late
a
at night.
And as a journalist, sometimes I weave in the extra questions. So I guess the one part of the question is, what is the importance of culturally relevant programming, specifically when we're talking about Black, Indigenous people of color? And then the second part of it was people outside of a community collective space. What are some recommendations to help keep people's brains juicy?
Okay, awesome. Okay, all right. So let me tackle the culturally relevant programming. Culturally relevant programming. So one of the reasons why we exist, the Creators Cottage exists, is so that we can have space for artists, all artists, but we hold space for artists of color. And there's something about coming into a space that is, in this case, Black-led, woman-led, that tells other Black women, oh, I'm welcome here. Now, that being said, and we do this a lot. We have a tea and tour of the cottage every first Tuesday of the month. And oftentimes, you know, people go on the tour and, you know, they'll come and then we have this marvelous tea. I'm told our tea will change your life. We have this life-changing tea. And so we're sitting around a teapot and you know, a person will say, man, I really like this place. I'm like, yeah, I really like to join, but I'm white. And I'm like, I can see that. And yeah, you can join. You absolutely can join. Now, you won't be the majority in this space. You're going to be a minority. And that's okay. There ought to be spaces like that. In a space like Wisconsin, which is a hyper-white space, you need spaces where you can go, particularly as an artist of color, and you can create art. And sometimes you don't want to necessarily, like, I'm one of these artists that flirt around with a lot of different mediums, okay? So you might find me in some weird places, like at the Wisconsin Sheep and Wool Festival. I will go there. And oftentimes I go to these spaces and I am the only brown person there. And so it just so happens that it falls on my birthday weekend. And so I tell my husband, he'll say, what do you want for your birthday? I'll say, I want you to go to the Wisconsin Sheep and Wool Festival with me. I want you to walk, and I want you to hold my hand, and I want you to stop and pretend like you're interested in the different vendors and try stuff and point to stuff, and, you know. And so he says, okay. And so we do these things, you know. And so because I'll have on my bucket list, a few years ago I had on my bucket list, I needed to learn how to spin. That was one of the things I wanted to do, you know. And it's not a whole lot of Black people in this city spinning. I might be one of the only ones. But, you know, so you got to go into spaces where you know, if you want to, you know, learn these things. And one time I was at the Wisconsin Sheep and Wool Festival, and I met this woman, and she had this fiber shop, and she says, hey, you know, we go up north to this place to, you know, and we have a retreat, and it's just wonderful. And I'm like, how far up north? You know. And she's like, it's great, it's really great. We stay in a motel. Yeah. But anyway, it's really, you know, it's really great. And so I said, okay, you know. And so one of the women who was there, she says, you're gonna be the only Black person there. Are you going to have a problem with that? I said, well, if nobody comes out wearing a bed sheet, I think I'll be okay. And she says, why would you say that? I said, I don't know, why would you ask that? My point is, sometimes when you're doing art, you don't necessarily want to be reminded of social, political things like race and so forth. Sometimes you just need safe gathering spaces. Now, that doesn't mean that those conversations won't come up, you know, but sometimes you just want to be, I might want to be an artist first, and I don't want to explain certain things. And so that is why culturally relevant spaces, see, I brought it back, see? That's why culturally relevant spaces are important. And that is why, you know, so, you know, to be able to have those things. Now, that being said, how can you create those spaces? I think wherever you go, you can create that space. We all have space and mass and take up presence in the world. And I think we can do that. I think you can just bring who you are to the table. I think sometimes we edit ourselves in spaces where we shouldn't edit ourselves, right? So I get to bring all of who I am to this table. And so that is what I would encourage as far as creating those spaces.
All I want to add is that everybody has a culture, whether you acknowledge it or not. So normally when we say culturally relevant spaces, we're talking about other people other than who's the numerical majority. So I just want to remind people that, because I remember I was searching for a school for my young child, and I asked, okay, how would he fit in here? What is going to be culturally relevant for him? And they said, we don't do culture. And I looked around. I'm saying the books are European, the photos, the pictures on the wall are European, the teachers are European. So you can sometimes think you're not doing culture, but we all are, because that is the essence of who we are. So what she is saying, Catrina is saying, is true. We all need a space where we can be the fullness of who we are and not feel constrained by any other external issue. And so for all of us living here in Wisconsin, we're around about 7% African Americans of the population. So we're always in spaces where we're about 7%, the one and only, or very few. And it takes, which I don't think we talk enough about, it takes courage. And you have to be brave to be in those spaces. And you have to modify yourselves in a lot of ways. So that's okay, because I'm getting ready to go. One of the beautiful benefits of my job is I get to go on Native American reservations. So that is another culture for me. It's one that I have to approach humbly. It's one when I'm there, I'm certainly not the majority, but it's also the most beautiful opportunity to learn, to see history come alive in people, to understand other folks that are my neighbors here in this state. So, you know, crossing cultures is a very beautiful thing. That's why at the Creators Cottage you're so able to do that. And then, which is extremely important to me as an artist, because I don't think, as I gave the example before, most people say, oh, what's your culture? Because they're saying, oh, you're outside of European. I'm not outside of European. I'm centered in African and African American. And everything else revolves around me, and everything else I cross into their cultures. And so it's a good place to, you know, just create how you create, but also to speak in ways that people understand. And I don't have to translate. simply they understand what I'm saying. So that is a great rest and a beautiful thing, and I feel happy when I am invited into Hmong spaces, not because I'm Hmong or can understand the totality of their story, but because I respect their story and understand that all people have theirs. My supervisor, for example, was very excited to learn I have a small percentage of Irish in me.
That was a mic
Drop the mic.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for your amazing questions, and thank you to our amazing panel. Another round of applause for the whole panel. If you have any other questions, I'm sure they will be happy to answer them, even once they get down from the stage. And thank you guys all again for coming. If you haven't already seen the gallery, make sure to take a look at the gallery.
And we are doing a raffle fundraiser for the Memory Collectors Storytelling Project Fighting Alzheimer's with Art. Right there. $1 or one ticket for $5, 6 tickets for $25. First prize is your very own legacy quilt. I shall do, or regular portrait if you want. Second prize is an embroidered quilt. Third prize is a baby quilt. But 100% of the proceeds go to support the Memory Collectors Project. We take Venmo in cash and check.
All right, and then Ida just reminded me that if you needed a ride, if you came here in the ride or need a ride back, you're going to be meeting around 7:45 at the Henry Street doors where you came in. But thank you guys so much. Check out the gallery, continue to mingle, and have a good night.